Welcome back to this channel. This is Unfiltered Forex with me, Clement, and in this video, we're talking about January 20th. I'm sure you've already heard about the inauguration of Donald Trump, the next president of the United States, and January 20th, that's when the inauguration is going to happen. Okay, first, something important to know about this day is that it's a holiday. And this time it's going to be on Monday. Every January 20th, after an election year, that's when the elected president takes the oath of office to officially now become the president of the United States. And this time it's going to be on a Monday and it's going to be on a holiday. Alright, so now let's get into why I'm doing this video. The reason why the inauguration is usually very important, it's because there are executive orders. Executive orders issued by the president who has just been sworn in on the same day. Yeah, sometimes they're issued on the same day, but these are powers that the president can use throughout his entire term. It's just that presidents usually have some executive orders for day one. Like you hear sometimes in the campaign promises, they say in the first 100 days in office, or maybe I'll do this on day one. Yeah, they are talking about the executive orders they will issue. Alright, so by definition, an executive order is a signed, written, and published directive from the president. Yeah, that's the definition of an executive order. Signed, written, and published directive from the president. This order is it's like immediately put into action, right? It's a directive. So like when the president says a change in something, or rather borders, or you remember during the COVID-19 situation, there were a lot of executive orders coming from presidents all over the world in their respective countries to put lockdowns in place and all that thing about social distancing, whatever. So executive orders are directives from the president himself, and there are some limits to what the president can and can't do. You see, it's not that the president has all powers to run the country however he wants through these executive orders. No, there are things that can be effected through executive orders, and there are issues that aren't covered here. So even before I get to talking about those issues, first is that there's a website where these directives are published, right? And I'll show you the one for United States. The Whitehouse, it's the website of the Whitehouse, because these things come directly out of the president's office. Yep, this is the website, briefing room presidential action. So these are all the executive orders issued from Whitehouse or from the president himself. Yep, this is the website, and on the day Donald Trump comes into office, there will be new orders here, and yeah, that's how executive orders are published. Alright, so back to here. I was going to tell you there are some issues that are covered in executive orders and there are some that aren't. So discussing the Trump administration and coming in, what can he do and what can't he do? Okay, so I'll keep this simple and list things that can be executed through an executive order and those that can't. So the usual ones: tariffs and energy policies and immigration policies. Yeah, these are things that can be executed on the go. Yeah, so the tariffs, you know what a tariff is, tax on imports, and immigration policies and energy policies. These can be changed immediately through executive orders, And there are those things that can't be changed through executive orders. They need litigation, and or not litigation, but rather legislation, and that's where Congress is involved. So among the things that the president can't do via an executive order is anything involving taxes, like tax cuts or tax hikes. They can't be issued through executive orders. These are things that need to pass through Congress to become legislation, right? And also programs of the social security number, programs like this, they also need to pass through Congress so that they can be effected, right? Yeah, these can't be touched by executive orders. So executive orders, the main ones are the tariffs, immigration policies, and energy policies, right? So now let's look at how executive orders can be challenged. Executive orders can be challenged, and by being challenged, I mean like if the president issues a directive, the directive may not go into effect because of some various reasons, and we're going to talk about those various reasons. So one very common one is litigation. If the directive is challenged in court, then it can't go into effect, right? That's litigation. That's one main way that an executive order can fail to go into effect. Second one, and the most common one really, is if it's checked by Congress. Checked by Congress meaning Congress is like the parliament now of the United States. They're the ones who make legislation. So checked by Congress, this means that the Congress can either challenge it and say they really don't like this, or they can limit the amount of resources required to implement the directive, right? So there's the passing legislation. Congress can either pass different legislation to counteract the directive, or just withhold the resources required to put the directive in effect. So you can already see this is a big hindrance to these directives from the president, right? And another way, of course, it's if it's revoked by the next president. Executive orders can be revoked by the next president. I'm sure, okay, if you are unaware, when Trump was in his first term, he issued some executive orders, quite a lot, I think around 200. And when Biden got into office, he revoked 60 of Trump's previous executive orders. The executive orders Trump had issued in his first term, 60 of them were revoked by Biden in his first 100 days. So you can expect something similar might happen now that Trump is coming to power. He might revoke some of the Biden's policies, and actually he said he's going to revoke most of them, especially the immigration orders. So Trump, you can expect him to revoke most of the or some of the executive orders issued by Biden, and that's it. These are the three main ways that an executive order can fail to go into effect. Either litigation, if it's checked by Congress, it may not make the whole directive invalid, but it may not be as effective if Congress doesn't support it, right? So it's the passing of legislation, a different one, or withholding resources. Then, of course, if it's revoked by the next president. So in this context, the revoking here, what you're looking at is what policies placed by Biden is Trump going to revoke. That's what the main point on this one, right? So now let's go to the expected executive orders from Trump's administration. Not just expected orders, but expected executive orders on the first day, on that January 20th, after he takes the oath of office. There are some orders that are ready for him to sign, and that's now what the markets are really trying to speculate on and trying to see what's going to happen. So there are some expected orders on day one that Trump is expected to sign. Yeah, as he said in his campaign promises, and through and through, even after he got elected, there's still some things he said he's going to do on day one in office. Right. So there are, I won't categorize them into economic and social policies, but I just list them in order of importance. And the first one, and the most controversial one, is tariffs. Tariffs are, like I said, and as sure as you know, these are taxes on imports, right? So the thing with tariffs is imports get taxed to reduce competition for homegrown companies from cheap imports. So let's say, for example, a company is making goods worth $100, but a company overseas, due to some competitive advantages, they can make the same product for, let's say, $50. So you can see this homegrown company is likely to face competition from the company abroad that's making goods cheaply, meaning these guys can import goods and flood the local market with cheap goods, and thus the homegrown company may die because of the cheap imports. So tariffs are taxes that raise the prices of these imports to make it a fair ground, or just to discourage the importers from importing into the country. Yeah, that's why tariffs exist, to protect homegrown companies. All right, so now let's talk about the tariffs Trump has proposed. So he's proposing a 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico. 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. And by the way, 25% is a huge price increase, because this is eventually what's going to be carried forward onto the consumer. And why this thing is controversial is because, first of all, this proposed is quite a big step, and it's going to have pressures on inflation, right? Even before I get to talk about inflation, let me also mention the proposed tax, or the proposed tariff on Chinese imports. At some point, he was talking about 60%, and sometime again, it's been heard to be likely to be 40%. And this is imports on China imports, tariffs on China imports. Yeah, so you can see this is a big price jump on the prices of imports. And as you know, America is, I think, the largest consumer in the world. Yeah, and most of what they consume, they actually import it. So you can see, given that fact, this is likely to affect prices locally, and that's going to cause inflation problems. And at this time, inflation is really a big problem, because I'm sure you remember the Federal Reserve, they are really hoping to see inflation fall so that they can cut interest rates, right? So if these tariffs are put into place, then inflation might not fall. It's actually likely to go higher, slightly higher, and that's going to discourage the rate cuts, right? So that's why this whole executive order that's expected on tariffs is quite controversial. And some policymakers are arguing that tariffs aren't likely to cause problems for inflation, because it's a one-time increase, right? It's only a one-time price hike on imports, and that'll be it. Which I don't think it makes sense, because even that one-time hike is still going to cause some inflation problems in the short term. Yeah, so it's not very convincing to say that there's a way tariffs isn't going to be inflationary. It's definitely going to be inflationary for some time. Okay, something else. Another executive order Trump is expected to issue on day one is to do with oil drilling. As I'm sure you know, America, they drill, or rather they produce and refine a lot of oil, and yeah, a lot of crude oil, and that's oil is really the main driver of energy prices. So Trump is expected to issue orders that are going to make it easier for oil drilling and exploration in that industry. Yeah, and once that happens, it's expected that energy costs are going to fall. And as you know, when energy costs fall, it tends to be disinflationary, meaning also prices are going to fall. So as you can see already, these two policies, tariffs and the oil drilling one, they are likely to one is likely to offset the advantage from the other, or to offset the disadvantage from the other. So if tariffs increase prices due to inflation, due to these hikes, oil drilling and lowering energy costs, this is likely to bring prices down. But yeah, this is going to take some time. This oil drilling thing, it's likely to take some time. So before that happens, the inflationary price pressures from tariffs will already be in effect at that time. So yeah, there's that to consider. And also there's another executive order expected on day one is the immigration. As you remember, we talked about how these executive orders from a previous regime can be revoked by the next president. Yeah, it's expected that Trump is going to revoke the immigration policies set by the Biden administration and set new ones for mass deportations of illegal immigrants. Yeah, the reason why this is taking the priority in even the campaign trail is because immigrants tend to be criminals, undocumented immigrants, because they can't get jobs, so they turn to crime. Yeah, when you don't have documents, you can't get a job in the United States, so your only option is to get into crime. And that's why illegal immigrants are a big problem for America, and Donald Trump says he wants to start with that on day one, mass deportation. Right. This can also have is okay. So to some extent, it's expected to have some implications on the labor market. Yeah, the employment situation in the United States, most of the employed people are actually immigrants. So the mass deportation thing is a very tricky subject on what effect it's going to have on the labor market. Right. Like you remember, after the pandemic and after Biden got into office, that's when the open borders policy was really in effect. And the US economy has been just gaining jobs month after month, all that long, probably because there's a lot of, what do you call them? A lot of unemployed immigrants there just getting jobs every other month, right? So there's that effect that's expected to have on the labor markets. All right, there are other executive orders expected, but these ones aren't very important that I can take my time looking into them. There's the one about electric vehicles. Is the other one about the LGBTQ plus people, yeah, and the whole thing about gender affirming care and gender transition for kids. Yeah, these are not main ones. these are the main ones when you're talking about the impact on the economy, especially the tariffs here, right? So this is why the markets are really waiting for that day, 20th January, that's on Monday, to see what kind of tariffs Trump is actually going to impose. All right. I'm done with talking about this. Now I'll show you what the market expects. Let's go to Kalshi. This is a prediction markets website. And what you're going to find here are basically people betting on anything, right? Like you can already see how many cabinet members Trump get confirmed before March. And yeah, you can see people are already speculating on that. And yeah, this one, this is what I'm here for. How many executive orders will Trump issue on day one? Most of the market participants here are expecting more than 15 on the first day, right? So you can tell that's going to be a lot of a lot of orders. Yeah, it's not very common for a president to issue this many orders on day one. Yeah, there's also this one. Which countries will Trump impose tariffs on in his first 48 hours? It's China and Mexico. People are literally betting on this. And yeah, you can see that China, 51%. So China is expected to be the first country that Trump imposes tariffs on. Let me check another website, Polymarkets. Yeah, this is Polymarkets, and I don't see the executive orders one. Let me show more. Yeah, as you can see on these tabs here, there's the inauguration, Trump 100 days, and people are really speculating on how many executive orders will Trump issue on day one. Yeah, as you can see on this market, it's the majority is on the side of less than 10 or between 10 and 14. Yeah, when you combine these two, it's between under 14, right? So that's where the markets are at the moment. And yeah, you can see there's also Trump deportation executive order. Yeah, there are quite a lot of speculation things to speculate on here on the first day of Trump being in office, and really, yeah, it's confusing. So what you're going to do at the moment is just on that Monday. Yeah, say it's going to be on a Monday. On that Monday, it's going to be a holiday, so of course you can avoid trading. And really, during that first 7 days, it might be very chaotic for the market as these orders get processed by the markets and as new orders continue to come into effect. So during those first 7 days, it may be very volatile for the markets. That's why I don't think it's going to be a good idea to speculate on what the markets are going to do during that Monday is a holiday, so during the coming Tuesday and just that week, it's likely to be chaotic. I will not talk about cryptocurrencies and the policies expected for cryptocurrencies. And like you saw, there are people betting on a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like, and if you have a question, you can ask on the comments. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely weekend.